Welcome MTG Burgeoning viewer. This is a quick message to remind you of our rewards for September. If we get at least 30 subscribers during the month of September, then one subscriber will be chosen at random and receive an entire set of Modern Horizon art cards. Also, any subscriber who comments on every MTG Burgeoning video during the month of September will become eligible for the October Pack Wars. On October 1st, a list will be compiled of all subscribers that commented on every MTG Burgeoning video released during September. From this list, one subscriber will be chosen at random to participate in the October Pack Wars for free. If the chosen subscriber is already a Pack Wars supporter or member, then that subscriber will receive a second spot in the October Pack Wars. So be sure to leave a comment and prepare for war. We're MTG Burgeoning. This is Mystery Wednesday. Subscribe now and join the movement. Our opponents are tapped out. It's high anxiety at the EDH commander table. We want to win the game this turn, or at least deny our opponents the opportunity to win the game during their next turns. We have no cards in hand. We untap. We need a top deck. We need a bomb. We need something. We draw a Rite of Replication. We have enough mana to kick it, but we only have one creature on the battlefield under our control. Which creature do we want it to be? Here are the top 10 creatures to target with a kicked Rite of Replication. Alright folks, so welcome back. MTG Burgeoning here, and Rite of Replication is a sorcery that costs 2 and 2 blue. And when we cast it, we put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of target creature. If Rite of Replication was kicked, put 5 of those tokens onto the battlefield instead. So the focus of this video will be what are the best creatures we can target with a kicked Rite of Replication. And before we get to our official top 10 lists, let's talk about a few creatures that just couldn't make the cut. The first one is Risen Reef. For 1, a green and a blue, whenever Risen Reef or another elemental enters the battlefield under our control, we look at the top card of our library. If it's a land, put it into play. If not, draw it. So if we have a Risen Reef in play, and we cast a kicked Rite of Replication, we put 5 copies of Risen Reef into play. And what ends up happening, a kicked Rite of Replication targeting Risen Reef will create 5 token copies of the creature. Each of these 5 creature tokens will trigger the original Risen Reef when they enter the battlefield. As these creature tokens enter the battlefield at the same time, they simultaneously see each other. Each token copy of Risen Reef triggers when it enters the battlefield and becomes triggered by each of the other 4 creature tokens. As a result, each Risen Reef creature token triggers 5 times, including the 5 triggers from the original Risen Reef. This will result in a total of 30 Risen Reef triggers. Upon resolution, the top 30 cards of our library are either on the battlefield as lands, in our hand, or most likely some combination in between. Even with this high amount of rampant card advantage, unfortunately, this Risen Reef interaction does not affect our opponent's board states or life totals. Although it doesn't meet the criteria with respect to our aforementioned gameplay parameters, Risen Reef is worth mentioning as a potential target for a kicked Rite of Replication. It looks fun. Another interaction worth mentioning is Halomar Excavator. For 1 and a blue, whenever it or another ally enters the battlefield under our control, target player puts the top 6 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, where X is the number of allies we control. So if we have Halomar Excavator on the battlefield, and we cast a kicked Rite of Replication, and we create our 5 creature tokens, our 5 copies. Okay. A kicked Rite of Replication targeting Halomar Excavator will create 5 token copies of the creature. Each of these 5 creature tokens will trigger the original Halomar Excavator when they enter the battlefield. As these creature tokens enter the battlefield at the same time, they simultaneously see each other. Each token copy of Halomar Excavator triggers when it enters the battlefield and becomes triggered by each of the 4 other creature tokens. As a result, each Halomar Excavator creature token triggers 5 times. Including the 5 triggers from the original Halomar Excavator, this will result in a total of 30 Halomar Excavator triggers. Upon resolution, we will mill 6 cards from players' libraries 30 times, for a total of 180 cards. Milling 180 cards is not enough to mill a table full of EDH commander opponents. Although it doesn't meet the criteria with respect to our aforementioned gameplay parameters, Halomar Excavator is worth mentioning as a potential target for a kicked Rite of Replication, particularly for self-mill strategies or in non-EDH commander formats. A second creature worth mentioning is the Bogerdan Hellkite. For 6 and 2 red, this 5/5 dragon with flash and flying, when it enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage divided as we choose among any number of target creatures and or players. So, with a Bogerdan Hellkite, not Hammer of Bogerdan, with a Bogerdan Hellkite on the battlefield and a kicked Rite of Replication, we create 5 copies of the dragon. A kicked Rite of Replication targeting Bogerdan Hellkite will create 5 token copies of the creature. Upon resolution, we can deal a total of 25 points of damage to any number of targets from the enter the battlefield triggers of these 5 token copies of Bogerdan Hellkite. Unfortunately, this may not be enough to vanquish a table full of opponents. Although it doesn't meet the criteria with respect to our aforementioned gameplay parameters, Bogerdan Hellkite is worth mentioning as a potential target for a kicked Rite of Replication. Alright, and our last subset of creatures to talk about before we get to our official top 10, we have a few honorable mentions. The first is Percys God of the Forge. For 3 and a red, we have an indestructible legendary enchantment creature god that's 6/5, and as long as our devotion to red is less than 5, Percys isn't a creature. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, Percys deals 2 damage to each opponent. So if Percys is on our battlefield as a creature, that's where things get a little tricky, because he's got to be a creature if we target a kicked Rite of Replication or any form of Rite of Replication. He can't be in enchantment form. A kicked Rite of Replication targeting Percys God of the Forge will create 5 token copies of the creature. That's the trick. Percys God of the Forge must be a creature in order for this interaction to be successful. This means his devotion to red must be 5 or greater. If so, then the spell resolves and each of these 5 creature tokens will trigger the original Percys God of the Forge when they enter the battlefield. The legend rule applies, and all but one of the Percys God of the Forge creatures die. We choose the 5 creature tokens. Although the 5 creature tokens die immediately due to the legend rule, each is triggered by the other 4 creature tokens. As these creature tokens enter the battlefield at the same time, they simultaneously see each other. As a result, each Percys God of the Forge creature token triggers 4 times, dealing 8 damage to each opponent. Including the 10 damage dealt by the original Percys God of the Forge, this will result in each opponent taking 50 points of damage. Percys God of the Forge's devotion restriction can be burdensome, but he is worth mentioning as a potential target for a kicked Rite of Replication. Honorable mention number 2, Yosei the Morning Star. For 4 and 2 white, this 5/5 flying legendary dragon spirit has a death trigger, and when Yosei the Morning Star dies, target player skips his or her next untap step, and then we tap up to 5 target permanents that player controls. So if we have Yosei on the battlefield, and we target, and we put our copies out there. Okay, there's our 5 copies of Yosei. A kicked Rite of Replication targeting Yosei the Morningstar will create 5 token copies of the creature. The legend rule applies, and all but one of the Yosei the Morningstar creatures die. We choose the 5 creature tokens, of course. As a result, for each death trigger, target player skips their untap step, and we tap up to 5 permanents that player controls. Although their board states are affected dramatically, this interaction does not affect our opponent's life totals and does not ensure imminent victory during our next 1 to 2 turns. Although it doesn't meet the criteria with respect to our aforementioned gameplay parameters, Yosei the Morningstar is worth mentioning as a potential target for a kicked Rite of Replication. And our last honorable mention before our top 10 is Kokusho the Evening Star. 4 and 2 black. This 5/5 flying legendary dragon spirit, when it dies, each opponent loses 5 life, and we gain life equal to the life lost this way. So we target Kokusho with our kicked Rite of Replication. We splash into play our 5 copies. A kicked Rite of Replication targeting Kokusho the Evening Star will create 5 token copies of the creature. The legend rule applies, and all but one of the Kokusho the Evening Star creatures die. We choose the 5 creature tokens. As a result, for each death trigger, each opponent loses 5 life, and we gain 5 life. Upon resolution, each opponent loses 25 life, and we gain life equal to the life lost this way. This interaction dramatically affects our opponent's life totals while simultaneously catapulting ours. However, even with an advantageous life total, this interaction is not game-winning and does not affect our opponent's board states. Due to this, Kokusho the Evening Star just missed this top 10 list, but is worth mentioning as a potential target for a kicked Rite of Replication. Alright, so now that we got a fun interaction out of the way, a few worth mentioning, and our honorable mentions, we can finally get to our top 10. Number 10. Omnath, Locus of Rage. For 3, 2 red and 2 green, we have a 5/5 legendary elemental. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under our control, we put a 5/5 red and green elemental creature token onto the battlefield. Whenever Omnath, Locus of Rage, or another elemental we control dies, Omnath deals 3 damage to target creature or player. It's this last ability that we're focusing on here with this interaction. Okay. A kicked Rite of Replication targeting Omnath, Locus of Rage will create 5 token copies of the creature. The legend rule applies, and all but one of the Omnath Locus of Rage creatures die. We choose the 5 creature tokens. As these 5 creature tokens die due to the legend rule, the original Omnath Locus of Rage triggers 5 times. Each dying creature token triggers itself and sees the other 4 creature tokens die, triggering 4 more times for a total of 5 triggers from each creature token. In addition to the 5 triggers from the original Omnath Locus of Rage, we resolve 30 triggers of 3 damage each for a total of 90 damage. 90 direct damage might be just enough to kill a table full of opponents. If not, then we also could affect their board states dramatically by dealing direct damage to their creatures 3 points at a time. Omnath Locus of Rage is preferred in the number 10 spot over Kokusho the Evening Star, Yosei the Morning Star, and Percys God of the Forge due to its versatility and lack of restriction. Number 9, Vela the Nightclub. For 4, a blue and a black, we have a 4/4 legendary human wizard with Intimidate. Other creatures we control have Intimidate. It's the last set of texts that's our most favorable in this interaction. When Vela the Nightclub or another creature you control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. Okay, so a kicked Rite of Replication targeting Vela the Nightclub will create 5 token copies of the creature. The legend rule applies, and all but 1 of the Vela the Nightclub creatures die. We choose the 5 tokens. As these 5 creature tokens die due to the legend rule, the original Vela the Nightclub triggers 5 times. Each dying creature token triggers itself and sees the other 4 creature tokens die, triggering 4 more times for a total of 5 triggers from each creature token. In addition to the 5 triggers from the original Vela the Nightclub, we resolve 30 triggers and make our opponents each lose 30 life. Each opponent losing 30 life might be just enough to kill a table full of opponents. Number 8. This one is a bit of a cheat because it's 2 creatures that do exactly the same thing. So as opposed to giving a spot on this top 10 list to each one of the creatures, I decided to include them both in the same spot. Number 1, Kalastria Healer. For 1 and a black, we have a 1/2 Vampire Cleric ally with the Rally ability. Whenever Kalastria Healer or another ally enters the battlefield under our control, each opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life. Additionally, we have the Malakir Blood Witch. For 3 and 2 black, we have a 4/4 flying vampire shaman with protection from white. When Malakir Blood Witch enters the battlefield, each opponent loses life equal to the number of vampires we control, and then we gain life equal to the life lost this way. So, starting with the Malakir Blood Witch, a kicked Rite of Replication targeting Malakir Blood Witch will create 5 token copies of the creature. As these creature tokens enter the battlefield at the same time, they simultaneously see each other. Each token of Malakir Blood Witch triggers when it enters the battlefield. Upon resolution, each opponent will lose 30 life, and we will gain life equal to the life lost this way. Each opponent losing 30 life might be just enough to kill a table full of opponents. If not, the dramatic shift in life totals in the presence of 6 4/4 flying vampires with protection from white may ensure imminent victory next turn. So let's swap out Malakir Blood Witch for the Kalastria Healer. A kicked Rite of Replication targeting Kalastria Healer will create 5 token copies of the creature. Each of these 5 creature tokens will trigger the original Kalastria Healer 5 times when they enter the battlefield. As these creature tokens enter the battlefield at the same time, they simultaneously see each other. Each token copy of Kalastria Healer triggers when it enters the battlefield and becomes triggered by each of the other 4 creature tokens. As a result, each Kalastria Healer creature token triggers 5 times. In addition to the 5 triggers from the original Kalastria Healer, each opponent will lose 30 life, and we will gain life equal to the life lost this way. Each opponent losing 30 life might be just enough to kill a table full of opponents. If not, then hopefully the dramatic shift in life totals may ensure imminent victory next turn. As you could see, Malakir Blood Witch and Kalastria Healer do the exact same thing. They're shifting 30 life from each of our opponents and putting that into our life total bank. Number 7. The Reaper King. The 6/6 legendary Scarecrow gives other Scarecrows we control +1/+1. However, it's whenever another Scarecrow comes into play under our control, that's what we care about, because then we can destroy target permanent. So we've got our Reaper King on the battlefield. Here come our 5 copies. A kicked Rite of Replication targeting the Reaper King will create 5 token copies of the creature. The legend rule applies, and all but one of the Reaper King creatures die. We choose the 5 creature tokens. Each of these 5 creature tokens will trigger the original Reaper King 5 times when they enter the battlefield. Although the 5 creature tokens die immediately due to the legend rule, each is triggered by the other 4 creature tokens. As these creature tokens enter the battlefield at the same time, they simultaneously see each other. As a result, each Reaper King creature token triggers 4 times, including the 5 triggers from the original Reaper King. This will result in the destruction of 25 target permanents. Our opponent's life totals are unaffected. However, destroying 25 of our opponent's permanents might be just enough to ensure imminent victory. Number 6. Crater Hoof Behemoth. For 5 and triple green, this 5/5 beast with haste has an ability that when it enters the battlefield, creatures we control gain trample and get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures we control. So we've got a Crater Hoof on the battlefield. In come our 5 copies. A kicked Rite of Replication targeting Crater Hoof Behemoth will create 5 token copies of the creature. As these creature tokens enter the battlefield at the same time, they simultaneously see each other. Each token copy of Crater Hoof Behemoth triggers when it enters the battlefield. Upon resolution, each of our 5 creature tokens and the original Crater Hoof Behemoth will be 35/35 with haste and trample. We declare combat, and this should be enough to ensure victory. Number 5. Chancellor of the Forge. 4 and triple red, this 5/5 giant, when it enters the battlefield, we create X 1/1 red goblin creature tokens with haste onto the battlefield, where X is the number of creatures we control. Okay. So we have our kicked Rite of Replication. We spread out our 5 copies. A kicked Rite of Replication targeting Chancellor of the Forge will create 5 token copies of the creature. As these creature tokens enter the battlefield at the same time, they simultaneously see each other. When the first enter the battlefield trigger resolves, we create 6 1/1 goblin creature tokens with haste. When the second enter the battlefield trigger resolves, we create 12 1/1 goblin creature tokens with haste. When the third enter the battlefield trigger resolves, we create 24 1/1 goblin creature tokens with haste. When the fourth enter the battlefield trigger resolves, we create 48 1/1 goblin creature tokens with haste. And finally, when the fifth enter the battlefield trigger resolves, we create 96 1/1 goblin creature tokens with haste. Upon resolution, we create 186 1/1 goblin creature tokens with haste. We declare combat, and this should be enough to ensure victory. Number 4, Terror of the Peaks. For 3 and 2 red, this 5/4 mythic rare dragon from Core 2021 says, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. So we have Terror of the Peaks in play. We have our kicked Rite of Replication. A kicked Rite of Replication targeting Terror of the Peaks will create 5 token copies of the creature. Each of these 5 creature tokens will trigger the original Terror of the Peaks 5 times when they enter the battlefield. As these creature tokens enter the battlefield at the same time, they simultaneously see each other. As a result, each Terror of the Peaks creature token triggers 4 times. In addition to the 5 triggers from the original Terror of the Peaks, we resolve 25 triggers of 5 points of damage each, for a total of 125 points of damage. 125 points of damage should be enough to ensure victory. Number 3, Scourge of Vulcas. For 2 and triple red, this mythic rare from Core 2014, it's a 4/4 flying dragon. Whenever Scourge of Vulcas or another dragon enters the battlefield under our control, it deals X damage to target creature or player, where X is the number of dragons we control. So Scourge is in play. Our kicked Rite of Replication is cast. A kicked Rite of Replication targeting Scourge of Vulcas will create 5 token copies of the creature. Each of these 5 creature tokens will trigger the original Scourge of Vulcas 5 times when they enter the battlefield. As these creature tokens enter the battlefield at the same time, they simultaneously see each other. Each token copy of Scourge of Vulcas triggers when it enters the battlefield and becomes triggered by each of the other 4 creature tokens. As a result, each Scourge of Vulcas creature token triggers 5 times. In addition to the 5 triggers from the original Scourge of Vulcas, we resolve 30 triggers of 6 points of damage each, for a total of 180 points of damage. 180 points of damage should be enough to ensure victory. Number 2, Hagrid Diabololist. For 4 and a black, whenever Hagrid Diabololist or another ally enters the battlefield under our control, you may have target player lose life equal to the number of allies we control. So with the Diabololist in play, our Rite of Replication kicked targets him, puts our 5 copies. A kicked Rite of Replication targeting Hagrid Diabololist will create 5 token copies of the creature. Each of these 5 creature tokens will trigger the original Hagrid Diabololist 5 times when they enter the battlefield. As these creature tokens enter the battlefield at the same time, they simultaneously see each other. Each token copy of Hagrid Diabololist triggers when it enters the battlefield and becomes triggered by each of the other 4 creature tokens. As a result, each Hagrid Diabololist creature token triggers 5 times. In addition to the 5 triggers from the original Hagrid Diabololist, we resolve 30 triggers of 6 lost life each, for a total of 180 lost life. 180 lost life should be enough to ensure victory. Number 1, Grey Merchant of Asphadel. For 3 and 2 black, 2/4 zombie. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black, and we gain life equal to the life lost this way. With Gary on the battlefield and under our control, we throw out there a kicked Rite of Replication targeting Grey Merchant of Asphadel will create 5 creature tokens of the creature. 5 token copies of the creature. As these creature tokens enter the battlefield at the same time, they simultaneously see each other. Each token copy of Grey Merchant of Asphadel triggers when it enters the battlefield. Upon resolution, each of our opponents loses 60 life, and we gain life equal to the life lost this way. Each opponent losing 60 life should be enough to ensure victory. And that's the way the news goes, folks. Do you agree with this list? Do you disagree? Which creatures would you add? Which creatures would you remove? Let me know in the comments below. This is MTG Burgeoning. Go forth and enjoy your day. Want to become a Pack Wars combatant? 4 easy steps. Step number 1. Click on the link below in the description or go to www.buymeacoffee.com/MTG Step number 2. Select either membership or support. Membership will enroll you into Pack Wars for $5 each month. Support will cost $5 for 1 month. Step number 3. Complete payment information. The name you use will appear on the site. Use your real name, use your YouTube handle, or use no name at all and be anonymous. Be sure to include your email address in the information. Step number 4, most importantly, prepare for war.